everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Now, at least in my opinion, it's okay to put up the Christmas decorations. Some of you may have done it before. Look, live your life. I'm not going to judge you, but in our house, we wait till after Thanksgiving. Got an incredible show for you today. We got the next college football playoff ranking coming out tomorrow. We're going to talk about that, give you our top 12, talk about the South Carolina, Ole Miss, Bama situation, and preview some of the biggest games. But first, guys, did you see the story from the New York Post about the Syracuse sideline reporter, who's a female, I won't say her name, said that the Miami mascot, the guy that's in the Sebastian the Ibis suit, which is basically like a pelican and a duck hooked up at a Holiday Inn and had a kid. That's what it looks like to me. Got down on a knee during a critical drive during the game. Critical drive. I think Miami had the ball. They had to score. And asked for her number. So I wish I knew what line he used. Because what would you say if you were in the mascot suit? Do you just come right out and you're like, do you have like some sort of wisecrack, like, I'm not the Aflac duck, but I'll cover you or something like that? I mean,
that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And here I thought Miami shouldn't get in the college football playoff. I believe now more than ever. I believe now more than ever, man.
Well, I respect
Go on the road to play Indiana. Let's find out.
But like, you know how much of a savage you have to be to ask a girl out in a duck outfit?
Yeah.
Do we know that she didn't give it to him?
I don't think she gave it to him.
Huh?
I don't think she gave it to him.
Look, you already got my respect, buddy.
Yeah,
he shot his shot.
Respect.
Yeah, who cares about the game? I mean, I'm in a duck outfit and trying to max.
Yeah, here we go. This is her, and there's Sebastian the Ibis. Oh boy, shot his shot. I'll give you respect. Listen, nobody was touched or anything like that. Sometimes you got to shoot your shot, man. You got a time for an open three. Maybe that was the only time. When everybody's looking at the game, what's a better time?
I know. I was disappointed in myself that I hadn't researched what an ibis was before this. I just thought he was a crane, and that was an oversight on my part. So I did do some research. According to legend, the ibis is the last of wildlife to take shelter before a hurricane hits, and the first to reappear once the storm has passed. This is why Miami named the mascot the ibis, but then they undid all that and they call him Sebastian.
Yeah.
Sebastian.
What is this, Monte Cristo? What are we doing?
I don't know. Georgia and Texas will rematch in the SEC championship. We'll break that down. And Oregon taking on Penn State in the Big Ten championship after Ohio State blew it again against Michigan. And we're going to give you the perfect top 12 as we inch closer to Selection Sunday. I'm Jake Crane, and welcome to Crane & Company. I definitely butchered that one. If we are going to be totally honest, most people are going to take the side of what is most advantageous to their team. If you're a South Carolina fan, you will say it's about who is playing better right now. And South Carolina is playing fantastic. If you're in the Bama or Ole Miss camp, you're going to be screaming that head-to-head should be the deciding factor. And I get it. You got to stick up for your school. I would love to sit up here and say that Bama shouldn't get in compared to the other two, but my job is not to be a Bama hater. It's to be a realist and go with what I believe is right in the situation, regardless of personal fandom. Every game in the regular season should count. It's the whole body of work, and that body of work has left us with 3 SEC teams that are tied at 9-3. The strength of schedule is somewhat similar between them. So just like in all of the conference standing rules, what is the first tiebreaker? It is head to head, because it is the purest form of finding out who moves on in a tiebreaker scenario, because it's settled on the field between the parties. It's actually a lucky break for the committee, because it pretty much takes the heat off them. It gives them an out, and it kind of works itself out. If we can't use head-to-head, which in my opinion is the greatest form of meritocracy, then why even play the games? If you don't want to count the first half of the season, then why play 12 games at all? Just play 6 regular season games and be done with it. For weeks now, I have given South Carolina their flowers, and damn it, do they deserve them. Shane Beamer has put on a masterclass lately, and the future is so bright in Columbia, it's basically turning into a solar flare up there. But with 3 teams tied at 9-3, and 2 of those 3 teams beating the other one, I don't know how you don't advance those two and pick from Bama or Ole Miss if that's the situation that arises. I wish all three could get in, but I also wish I had the facial bone structure of John Stamos, and neither one of those things are going to happen, unfortunately. The harder question is if it comes down to Ole Miss and Bama, who didn't play each other. That's when you have to get in the weeds because there is no head-to-head. Lastly, I want to reiterate, I'm talking about what I would do in this situation, not what the committee is going to do, because nobody knows. They're making this thing up as they go. South Carolina fans won't like this, and I totally understand. You're defending the fort. That's admirable, and I respect it. But like we always say, if we wanted to make everyone happy, we just sell Girl Scout cookies. David Cohn, who loves Girl Scout cookies.
I do.
Former Michigan quarterback. My brother, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver, Blaine Crane. And David, I know this isn't the only scenario where we're going to be picking between like Bama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss. We're going to talk about some of the other scenarios and what spots are left when you do the math and kind of the way we think it's heading. But is head-to-head, when you look at, if everything else is pretty much even, which it is in this scenario, if South Carolina was 10-2 and Bama was 9-3 and Bama beat South Carolina head-to-head, I could see you putting South Carolina in because the win-loss record is different. But since those three are the same, I don't know how you don't look at head-to-head to determine.
Well, it is true that I love Girl Scout cookies. I also love Shane Beamer, and I'd love to see him get a shot in this college football playoff.
Me too.
And I'll tell you, there is an interesting dynamic here. I wonder if you guys have noticed it as well, or if it was just me because I was in a household full of Alabama fans over Thanksgiving. But because South Carolina has overperformed their expectations on the season, and they're 9-3 and they're playing hot right now, and there's some other teams at 9-3 across the country, Alabama being one of them, who've sort of underperformed what expectations are. There does seem to be this element that, hey, South Carolina fans are galvanized right now. There's a lot of energy. Put us in. We can beat anyone. I find that interesting. But to your point, on the head-to-head, at some point, we do have to be as scientific as possible. We can sit up here and just argue until we're blue in the face because the committee is a subjective process, at least for the spots that we're talking about, not the first four qualifiers. Because it's subjective, we can sit up here and argue until we're blue in the face about strength of schedule or who beat who or point differential. And some of that is a little bit fun, but ultimately it will lead nowhere because at the end of the day, just like we saw last year, the committee can put whoever they want in that final spot or in those final couple spots. I do think the committee for most of the years that we have had a playoff has done a good job of saying this is the team that we think is better, right? Like maybe there's a brand bias certainly to it as well, but a lot of times there's a brand bias because those teams do perform really well. So we're going to see that again this year. It's just going to be from 8 to 12 rather than from 3 to 4 to 5 like we saw last year. But instead of arguing until we're blue in the face, what I like to lean on are the tiebreaker metrics for the conference, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're a South Carolina fan and you're upset because you're at 13 or 14 and you're not going to get a crack at a 12-team playoff, well, are you mad that you're not getting a shot in the SEC championship game this weekend, right? Like there are some objective metrics that we can talk about. You're not going and knocking on SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey's office saying, but we're one of the best teams and our losses shouldn't count and we're playing hot right now. Put us in the SEC championship game. Let us get a shot at Georgia or let us get a shot at Texas. If you literally use these metrics, which you can do when there are tied teams, then what would be the qualifier? It would be a head-to-head matchup. And in which case, I'm on the SEC's website right now looking at it, and I see Alabama ahead of South Carolina and Ole Miss for that matter.
Blaine, where do you sit on this? And South Carolina fans, if you're upset at the way that we're viewing this, I get that. I understand. I respect it. But if the shoe was on the other foot, South Carolina fans would be screaming, we won the head-to-head. And when you look at the transitive property, you can't really use it because Bama lost to Oklahoma. I believe South Carolina beat them, right? Bama destroyed LSU. LSU beat South Carolina at South. We can do this back and forth, but that's why head-to-head is almost kind of a relief pitch. It gives you an out of, listen, this is concrete. Y'all played against them. I don't care where it was. I don't care when it was. You had your chance to beat them on the field, and you didn't do it regardless of the scoring margin.
Well, I think a 3-loss team getting in the playoffs is absolutely garbage anyway, but that's a story for another day, I guess. But I will say this, doesn't matter what I think. I've seen the committee, and what does the committee think? Because I saw them put an Alabama team who lost to Tennessee in front of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised. And at the end of the day, well, it's a TV show, buddy. It's a TV show. So what would be even greater to get people talking than put South Carolina in front of Alabama?
Mm. Well, and I wonder, Alabama's a bigger brand than South Carolina when it comes to football. I think we can all agree on that. But if David, if you take what you were saying and the South Carolina fan base can fill it up as good as anybody. Like, they will follow. They are as passionate without Saban being at Alabama. Like, if Nick Saban was at Alabama, I think that could be the thing that pushed it over the edge if it's not head-to-head. Does Saban not being in Alabama actually hurt Bama a little bit here? Because I don't think they would tell Saban no.
Possibly. I think you're right on that. But I don't think the committee, I don't think the committee is going to get that into the weeds on the South Carolina side of things. Like, I don't think they're going to sit there and talk to each other like, hey, South Carolina is a passionate fan base and they're playing. Like, I think it's going to legitimately be, do we think that this team is one of the best 12 in the country right now? And to your point with when it comes to Alabama and South Carolina, I've been wondering, is there a scenario where we could see where South Carolina's competition is not Alabama because both of those teams could get in? But that's where the Ole Miss loss too comes in, because you can't have 3 of the 9-3 teams get in. Like, I mean, I know we're going to talk about break down our top 12 and the bracket and talk about that. But are there scenarios that could exist with an SMU loss and possibly a really bad Penn State loss where some of these teams not only climb up into the top 12, but you could have multiple of them?
Well, I looked at what Ward Manuel said when they asked him about, are you going to punish teams that lose in the conference championship game? I went back and looked at what he said. I think it was on November 19th or something, and it's gobbledygook. It's gobbledygook. He says, we're going to judge teams as they are. Right? But if you make a conference championship game, we're going to hold you in the highest esteem. What does that mean? Like, what? Okay. Like, is that going to keep me, and I know we're going to get into the scenarios, is that going to keep SMU from being left out if they lose to Clemson? Like, what does that mean? You're either going to punish us. I don't care where you hold us in regard. Are you going to punish us for that loss? We know you get rewarded for the win. You get a top 4 spot if you're at one of the Power 4 conferences, at least the way it looks now to me. Like, are you going to say, well, you lost that game, we're going to count that as a loss? We're looking at you as 11-2 versus a 10-2 team, as opposed to looking at them as an 11-1 team still versus a 9-3 team if SMU were to lose. We want to know. The phone line's going to open at 2:45 p.m. Central. All right, it's 1-855-236-3228. Y'all call in and plead y'all's case. If you're a team that's on the bubble, or, Miami, South Carolina, y'all call in and plead your case. We're going to have a ton of phone calls today. We're going to get to the chat, too. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Let's go ahead and get to the chat real quick.
All right, Chad, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you donate, it's on topic. It will get read. We're going to start the day off with Clint Morrison. He says, head-to-head is not the most important. The body of work and how you're playing now should at least be treated equally.
But I don't so your argument to me, Clint, is that you need to treat the whole body of work and how they're playing right now matters the most. You understand the contradiction in that, right? You're saying the whole body of work. So from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So if Alabama played good for the first half of the year and played bad for the last half of the year, and South Carolina played bad for the first half of the year and played good for the second half of the year, and you got a head-to-head because they got equal records, how is that not counting the whole body of work? So you mean so let's say South Carolina won their last 3 games by 40 points, which they didn't. Okay, and they had a worse record than Bama and lost to them. Should they be in still because they're playing better than they are? You can't live in that world when the teams are even. If South Carolina was 9-3 and Bama was 10-2, but South Carolina beat Bama head-to-head and they were playing better than Bama right now, I think you have a legitimate argument for why that South Carolina team could be ahead. But don't tell me you're going to count the whole body of work and then not count the beginning of the first half of the season. Like that blows my mind. That's like saying, look, I ate the whole pie, but the first half of the pie doesn't count.
Look, if we're only taking into account the last 2 weeks, there's a team in Ann Arbor I could start.
That's what I'm saying. You can't do that. It's contradictory.
Let me call in.
Your argument should be, yes, we're even. Head-to-head doesn't matter, which I think is absolutely nuts because it's the best judge, right? You played on the field. You played 4 quarters on the field. Give me a better argument than that. You can't say, let's use the whole body of work, but cut off half the body. That's not how this works.
Especially like the Ole Miss loss was, 27-3?
Yeah, you got destroyed.
That's the thing is it's not just Alabama. You also have another Ole Miss team that has the exact same record as you, and they destroyed you.
And God, I want to say South Carolina should be in. Every part of me wants that, but I can't.
I'll just hate South Carolina.
That's not true.
No, I mean, I legitimately, like, it's not any more impressive for me that Alabama's last loss happened to come against a team that's so bad in the rankings that we're not even talking about them. Like, their performance was just as bad against.
Well,
that's not any more impressive.
I've had South Carolina fans tell me, but Jake, we beat Oklahoma, and Oklahoma destroyed Alabama. Okay, now do LSU.
Well, here's the thing. Isn't Missouri 9-3 right now?
Yeah.
And South Carolina has the head-to-head over Missouri?
Mm-hmm.
So what if Missouri starts trying to pitch their way?
Why not? I understand.
Like, if we're doing this whole thing about I beat you, but you beat him, and it's a Mexican standoff and out. So, like, because I guarantee you South Carolina fans are going to bang the table on the head-to-head against Missouri at 9-3.
That's what I'm saying. It all just depends on what your team needs. And I get it. Be upset at me. I get it. I understand. I would be the same way. Right? If it came down to Auburn, if I was a fan, not analyzing, but if I was a fan, I would be saying, oh, well, this should matter the most because it's the best for my team. I get it.
Let's got a $5 donation from Jack Hastings. What's up, Jack? He says, I understand the head-to-head thing. We have seen this committee ignore resume and look at momentum when choosing the final spot, like FSU. Now that is South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either.
No, I don't think it is either. That's why I brought up the Saban point. I do think that carries some weight to it. I am just wondering if you are the committee, right? This is all I ask. Because last year you pulled the rug out from Florida State in the last ranking. Mm-hmm. You strung them along.
Yep.
Whatever you're going to do, just do it this week.
Okay. Yeah.
Just tomorrow when they release the rankings, if that's what it's going to be, if Bama's going to be in front of South Carolina, then the next week Bama should be in front of South Carolina. If South Carolina's going to be in front of Bama on the selection show, neither one of them are playing. Neither one of them are playing. I get that Clemson, who South Carolina just beat, if you're a South Carolina fan, you're rooting for them to beat SMU. But if you're an Alabama fan and you see the way this is going, I mean, are you kind of rooting for Clemson to beat SMU?
Or if you're South Carolina?
If you're South Carolina, you need Clemson to beat. But if you're Alabama, you're rooting for SMU to beat Clemson to eliminate Clemson from it. Because this is what this is going to come down to. All right, I did the math. There's 12 spots. You got 5 automatic bids. So that leaves 7. Notre Dame is in. That leaves 6 as an independent. So you got 6 spots. There are 6 spots left. The Big Ten's going to get in 4. All right, so you take 3. You don't count the Big Ten champion. Penn State's going to be in. Indiana's going to be in. Ohio State's going to be in. You can think whatever you want about that, but that's what it's going to be. So that's 3 other spots the Big Ten is going to fill. So that leaves you with 3 spots. 6 minus 3 is 3. The SEC is going to get at least 3 in, counting the conference champion. Georgia's in. Texas is in. Tennessee is in. So that leaves 1 spot. 1 spot for Miami. If SMU loses the ACC championship, right? Or Bama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss. That leaves 1 spot. So I will say this again. If you are one of these teams hoping at the end, it's weird, it's juxtaposed. Does it help you more if you're South Carolina if Clemson wins, therefore allowing the ACC to possibly get 2 in? Or do you want Clemson to lose to make sure the ACC only gets 1 in? And again, they may keep Miami. I don't know. All I ask is you just keep it the same the next week for the teams that aren't playing if they're in front of each other. Right? That's all. I
just think in that scenario, if you're South Carolina, you want Clemson to win. I think the committee would put in South Carolina at 9-3 over an 11-2 SMU team who now lost their conference championship game and lost to BYU.
They might.
What Ward Manuel's been saying.
Let me throw this hypothetical out here and maybe take y'all to Rainbow Land real quick. What if the committee, not even looking at the head-to-head losses, all right, what if they look at that LSU loss? Kind of like when Jordan Travis got hurt.
How can you do that,
though? For Florida State, and they kept him out. Lenore Sellers went out in that football game.
So what?
And I'm just saying,
I've been seeing South Carolina fans have been sending me this all weekend.
The committee weighed injured players. They can look at certain games and make an opinion.
That's the consequence of having a mobile quarterback. Everybody wants a quarterback who's Lamar Jackson until all of a sudden he takes more hits than a drop back passer, and then you miss time in an important game.
And also,
I'm sorry, no one was complaining when he's breaking the pocket against Clemson.
I just don't think we can live in that world, number one.
No.
But that's why I disagreed. Say what you want. We got a better playoff, whatever. I disagreed with how it went down for Florida State last year. I'm on record saying that. There is a difference, though, in what happened to Lenore Sellers and what happened to Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis had a devastating injury. He was not coming back. Lenore Sellers has come back even stronger. So I don't think you can measure those two things the same. If Lenora Sellers was out for the rest of the season and South Carolina was just kind of, clinking their way through these games and barely winning with a quarterback that really can't do it, maybe you can make that comparison. But Lenora Sellers is back and he's even stronger.
So one thing real quick, talking about that and talking about the head-to-head. I'll say today what I said last Selection Sunday. There were 3 scenarios last year that we had never seen happen, and out of the 3, one had to happen. Either the SEC champion gets left out of the college football playoff. We had never seen that. That was Alabama had just beaten Georgia.
Yep.
2, an undefeated Power 5, then a Power 5 team gets left out. That was unthinkable, unheard of. That was the Florida State situation. Or 3, a regular season head-to-head matchup gets ignored. That was Texas beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
One of them had to happen. And we're saying, well, you're not going to leave an undefeated team out, right? Well, that's what happened. They found the loophole with Jordan Travis getting hurt. And what I told you at the time, if that hadn't happened and they put in an undefeated Florida State team in because Jordan Travis had stayed healthy and they still looked like world beaters, the next thing is they would have ignored the head-to-head against Texas. They would have left Texas out because there was no way they were going to leave Alabama. We didn't get to that point, but I think that's what would have happened, and you could see that play into this year's playoff.
All right, I want to go ahead and move real quickly, guys. I want to tell you about our friends at Jeremy Razors. While we have all these grinches that are running these corporations trying to tear down traditions, Jeremy's Razors is here to help you save them. And right now, Jeremy is running an epic Cyber Monday sale. All right, 30% off on everything site-wide. We've got their Precision 5 razor right here on the set. It is fantastic. It's going to be a close shave for the committee. You want a close shave, a clean shave. That's what the Precision 5 does. There's a reason it has the word precision in it. This thing is an absolute beast. Jeremy's makes it the perfect gift for every man in your life. They got stocking stuffers under $15, or if you want to go bigger, or if you want to go badder, Jeremy's has a shave, hair, and body bundle for under $50. That's a bundle of Ruski if I've ever seen one. And get this, they'll even throw in free shipping on qualifying orders. Listen, we are all about keeping the Christmas traditions we all want. And that's exactly what Jeremy's Razor stands for. So don't miss out on these Cyber Monday deals. That's 30% off everything site-wide at jeremysrazors.com. This deal's not going to last forever, so head on over to jeremysrazors.com right now to grab these deals while they last. Some exclusions apply. See website for details. Get that good shave. Just shave on. All right. Phone lines, like I said, open it up in 23 minutes. Guys, let's get to our top 12. And I want to explain to people once again how we do this. This is not the college football playoff format. We are giving you our top 12. And then we're going to show you what this would look like if you used the college football playoff format with the automatic bids and the G5 that gets in, which is another automatic bid, in the format they have listed. So here's what we got if you're on audio. Oregon 1. Texas 2, Notre Dame 3, Penn State 4, Georgia 5, Tennessee 6, Ohio State 7, SMU 8, Indiana 9, Arizona State 10, Alabama 11, Ole Miss 12. So we get it, South Carolina fans? Again, love you. Love you guys. Know you're going to be pissed, but that's okay. Let's get pissed together. This is the trust tree. This is where you're at. This was probably the easiest one I think we've gotten to make outside of the back end up to this point. If you want to argue, I can understand people arguing, hey, maybe we should move Alabama up 1, Ole Miss up 1, and put South Carolina at 12 and take Arizona State out. But they're playing so good right now. They're probably going to be the Big 12 rep. We're going to go over that game tomorrow or later in the week. My question to you, David, is when it comes to getting in, how can the committee say it's okay for an 11-1 Indiana team to get in? Not playing the conference championship game, no huge wins. All right, you played one game. You got drugged by Ohio State. We saw what happened against Michigan at their place, like Indiana played at their place. But how can you let them in with no qualms, but then punish SMU if they lose the ACC championship, which would drop them from 11-1 with a win over a BYU team that is still ranked, which is better than any win, I think, Indiana. A loss to a BYU team, which Indiana has a loss to the ranked team, but played in the conference championship game. That, to me, is where I would worry the most if I was Bama, South Carolina, or Ole Miss.
That's just where the strength of schedule comes into play. And Blaine, you and I were looking at SMU's schedule earlier and just sitting there looking at it like, I get it. It's tough when you go play in the ACC championship in your first year in the conference and you, let's just say they lose that and you get left out. But we've been talking about this scenario for much of the year. And I think it's not that different than if Indiana, let's say Indiana, because they almost found themselves in the Big Ten championship game this week. Penn State loses after the Buckeyes guys got upset by Michigan, they would have been playing Oregon. If they go and they get blown out by Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, that would hurt their case too. And this is where the Miami thing, and I have a list of questions I want to ask you guys too, but this is where, what was Miami last week for us? In that eight spot, something like that, eight. And now they're out of our top 12. And in the AP, I saw the AP dropped them to 14. Not that the AP poll means anything in the college football playoff era. We're going to find out tomorrow night where the playoff's going to have Miami ranked. But that's from 8 to 14 after you pick up your second loss. Don't think that the same can't happen for a number 8 SMU or number 9 Indiana, even though Indiana's locked in already.
Yeah, and I want to get to those questions, Davis, because it's fantastic before we get to the chat and then our previews. But let's go ahead and see what this would look like in the college football playoff format. Let's go ahead and bring that next graphic up. Remember, the rules are different. All right, if you are a group of 5 team has to be in there. So here's how we have it. Oregon's the 1 seed, Texas the 2 seed, SMU the 3 seed, Arizona State the 4 seed. They get the bye and the top 4 seeds. Then you would have, as it stands today, and we're going to talk about Boise State, UNLV, Army, and Tulane, but Notre Dame would host Boise State. That'd be the 5-12. Penn State would host Alabama. Oh, my
yes.
God. In the 6-11 game. Georgia would host Indiana in the 7-10 game. And probably what would just be a maniacal matchup. Tennessee and Neyland would host Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Like we said all year, it's going to be hard for them to screw this up because the matchups are so good. But, buddy, that Tennessee-Ohio State game and that Penn State-Alabama game would be absolutely epic.
Yeah, and that's where, if you're the Buckeyes, it'll be interesting for us to go through and figure out what each team is pulling for this weekend, because obviously the Buckeyes are right there on that 8-9 line, and in our ranking, they were 7, right? But once you have the first 4 qualifiers and the first 4 auto bids in there, that moves them to 9, which means you're the first team traveling. Obviously, they're trying to do everything they can to get one of those games in Columbus now that they're not in the Big Ten championship game. But here's a list of 5 questions that I wrote down for you guys. A lot of this stuff's going around on social media, but just after putting this list together, I just wanted to ask you guys. The first one is, has Notre Dame already locked in that 5th spot? Now that they're not playing in the conference championship, are they the first ranked team after the byes?
I think they are. Again, they can't get that 1st through 4. When you look at the way the rankings have gone, regardless of what you think about Notre Dame, that Northern Illinois loss is horrible. I think this one is locked up. Now, could they maybe be the 6th seed? Possibly,
I think the only way is if Oregon loses to Penn State.
God, that 5 seed looks so sweet.
What if Oregon loses the Big Ten championship game to Penn State and that's their only loss all year? Would they move to 5 and that bumps Notre Dame to 6?
That is a scenario. I don't think Ohio State is going to jump Notre Dame with the 2 losses. Again, neither one of those teams played. Nothing is going to change. If we take Georgia, right, and they beat Texas again, I think they would probably just trade places. As far as the 2 seed being the SEC champion and then the 7 seed. So, yes, I think that is the only scenario. But either way, maybe the best way to put it is, has Notre Dame locked up a host spot? But then you look, what is the easiest path for a team not getting a bye? It's not the 1.
No.
All right, because obviously they do get a bye. It's the 5 seed, right? Because the 5 seed, you get to play the 12, which is going to be a group of 5 now when you look at the way it's working out. Then
maybe. It could be the Big 12 champ.
It could be. I don't see if Arizona State wins that game. I think regardless, the Big 12 is going to get the 4th. I really believe that. But you get the 12th seed, then your next game is a neutral site game against the 4 seed, the weakest of the top 4, quote unquote, conferences, highest seeded team, however you want to put it. And again, I think that's the easiest path out of anybody. If you're the 1, it's kind of unfortunate that you got to play the 8 or the 9, because that's going to be a hell of a matchup if you look at, the way it's tracking for Oregon, right?
Because there's no reseeding.
Because there's no reseeding.
There's no reseeding in the bracket. Okay, so we talked about if Oregon possibly loses to Penn State. Now what happens if Oregon takes care of Penn State? How far would they fall?
I think Penn State loses the host spot. I think Penn State would end up traveling. I think that would be a scenario where Ohio State could be that 6th seed. They would trade places with Ohio State, go on the road probably to play Tennessee, because remember, they lost to Ohio State at home.
And people need to understand that's not reflected here in our bracket. So when you see Penn State at 6, we can't project already whether or not, we could say whether we think they're going to win the Big Ten championship game this week, but we don't know how far they would fall. That's why it's worth asking. And I think you bring up a good point is, like, if they go and lose that conference championship game. They could fall out of a hosting spot and maybe the Buckeyes slide in there and you could say, well, they didn't have to risk anything on conference championship day, but at least they would have a head-to-head win.
They would have the head-to-head. They went to your place and beat.
Okay, so now for the SEC, you touched on this a little bit, but one of my other questions was how far would Georgia or Texas fall with a loss, knowing that the winner of that's going to get the bye?
I think, again, it would be almost interchangeable with Georgia and Texas right now because that would give Texas 2 losses, both to Georgia. Georgia would end up winning the SEC, getting that second spot, as opposed to the Big Ten getting the first. I think as you're seeing it on the screen, Texas would turn into the 7 seed. Georgia would turn into the 2 seed.
Okay, so you're already on record for my next question with SMU, as SMU is not out with a loss to Clemson. So.
I don't think they should be. I don't know if they will be. I'm just under the impression that how can I penalize you? How can I penalize you for playing in a conference championship game the other person didn't have to?
So should that be the same for the Big 12?
Yeah. Well, I think the Big 12 is only getting one in anyway, but Arizona State isn't 11-1. If Arizona State was 11-1, I think we could have that conversation. Because there's so few 11-1 teams. You've got Oregon, who's undefeated, right? Texas has 1 loss. SMU has 1 loss. If Arizona State had 1 loss and they lost in the Big 12 title game, I think it would be a similar situation to what's going on in the ACC. But that's not the situation we live in. In the Big 12, you have 2 10-2 teams that are playing each other. In the ACC championship, it's ironic, but that it's so different. You have an 11-1 team playing a 9-3 team. So to me, I think it would just kind of flip-flop. I would keep the same methodology, but it would be for the Big 12, not the ACC.
So what about you, Blaine? Would SMU be penalized if they lose the ACC championship game to Clemson, who's 9-3 right now?
I mean, just comes into way how much. I don't think so. I mean, do y'all think that you should be rewarded and have equally penalty if you're going to get rewarded if you make it to the conference?
Here's what I say. I think it's the easiest way to go about this. Let's use SMU for an example. If you're 11-1 going into the conference championship game, because if you win it, it's a moot point. But if you lose it, I think the committee should treat you as the 11-1 team you were before you went and played that conference championship game. I'm not going to get into what happens if the starting quarterback gets hurt in the conference championship game. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I just think it should not be a penalty. You should be judged on the merit of if this other team that didn't play in the conference championship game is going to be judged on the merit of their regular season, then you should be judged on the merit of your regular season. Those are 2 comparable things. What is the alternate? It is you made the congratulations, you made the championship game. Now we're going to punish you.
Well, what's funny enough is that this was the point only 14, 15 days ago that Lane Kiffin was trying to make about why would an SEC team want to go play in the SEC championship game and possibly penalize themselves with a 3rd loss. But now he is one of those teams that needs someone like SMU to be penalized for going and playing in their conference championship.
I don't think they should be. I don't know what they will be.
How much does strength of schedule matter if SMU loses?
I think if you're again, how much does strength of schedule matter for Indiana? Look at SMU's strength of schedule. Look at Indiana's. You tell me Indiana needs to be a shoo-in at 11-1, but all of a sudden SMU loses the ACC championship game going 11-1.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, we dropped Indiana down a bunch.
We did.
Lost to the Buckeyes, right? It was only, we dropped them down so far that they were out of our top 12 after just 1 loss to the Buckeyes. They only climbed back in because of 2 SEC losses that same day, Ole Miss and Alabama.
If Indiana was 10-2, they would not be in this. We would not be having this conversation. If SMU was 10-2, they would have to probably win the ACC championship game to get in. But we're not comparing a bunch of 11-1 and 10-2 teams. What we're looking at is 11-1 versus 9-3. And that's where I think win-loss record has to matter, because that's a 2-loss difference, right? We can talk about strength of schedule. I get it. But once we get to a 2-loss difference in win-loss record, I think it becomes more of a moot point, and you've got to judge the team based on what their win-loss.
All right, so my last question here for today, and we're going to have a lot more throughout the week. What happens if Boise State loses?
I think because
if Boise State loses, they will not be a conference champ.
No, they won't. UNLV, I think, is going to be in. I think this Boise State UNLV game is a play-in game. What I'm interested to see is what happens if Army beats Tulane. This is why that loss by Tulane to Memphis hurts Army, because now it looks worse if you beat Tulane, and I don't think you can sneak in. If Tulane would have beaten Memphis, and we see where they're ranked in the college football playoff rankings, and Army were to beat them, maybe, just maybe they could backdoor UNLV if UNLV beat Boise State. Now that Tulane lost, and they're a 3-loss team, I think this is a true, pure play-in game. We see this in college basketball, right? The play-in games before they go get murdered by a 1 seed. This is what you're seeing with Boise State and UNLV. I think the winner is in.
I'll tell you what else doesn't help is if Notre Dame is locked into that 5 spot and the 12th seed would be the group of 5, in this scenario it would be, because if Boise loses, a team like Army is going to have to come from way back, like possibly unranked. Well, actually, Army may be ranked in this one that comes out Tuesday. But if that's the matchup, Notre Dame and Army, we just saw that.
Yeah.
And it was a bloodbath.
Yeah. So, again, if it's going to be really tough for Army, I think they're basically eliminated. This, to me, is a
If Boise State wins, do they get to bye?
I don't think they should.
This is why the College Football Playoff Committee ranking Boise so high starting several weeks ago,
at 12.
I thought kind of is going to work against them, because at that time there were still undefeated teams in the Big 12, like BYU, for instance, was still unbeaten. And Miami, I think, only had 1 loss at that point. But now all those teams have lost. How is a Big 12 champ who's going to have 2 losses or a possible 9-3 Clemson ACC champ going to catch up in the rankings to where they already have been listing?
Do we think the only 2 possible scenarios of where a group of 5 could get the bye is if Clemson wins the ACC, right, and then Boise State has to beat UNLV and maybe they jump to Big 12? Outside of that, I see no scenario.
Let me look here.
Right? Because that would be the only way. Because if Boise State beats UNLV, they'll have a shot at it. I don't think they're going to get it. But if UNLV beats Boise, it's a moot point.
Boise was ranked 11th in last week's college football playoff rankings. Not seeded. They were already ranked 11th in that spot.
And Arizona State is where?
In last week's, Arizona State was 16.
So would they jump Arizona State over Boise to give Arizona State the bye? I think they would. But if UNLV wins, it doesn't matter because you're going to be the 12th seed as the group of 5. Your only shot is Boise beating UNLV, right? Or the committee saying, you know what, ACC, a 9-3 team won it. Clemson beats SMU, right? We're going to give you the bye there. And then in that scenario, the ACC, that's not a good look either. I don't know. I think those are the only 2 ways. But speaking about ways to win, we're going to get back to the chat. The phone line is going to open in 9 minutes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I know everybody's getting along in there, I'm sure. Let's talk a little bit, David, about this Georgia-Texas game. What's your initial feeling? I'm not ready to make a call on it yet. Mm-hmm. What's your initial feel on Georgia-Texas?
My initial feel, first off, the line is still the same as what we talked about yesterday. Right now is Texas -2.5 favored. That game will be in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz, and the over-under is 48.5. I went back this morning and I rewatched the first Texas and Georgia game just to see, was it as bad as we first thought? Because Georgia jumped out to such an incredible lead and got to a point where Steve Sarkisian is pulling Quinn Ewers out of the game and putting in Arch Manning. A couple thoughts. One, how many times have we seen Georgia just line up and be so much better than everyone else with the personnel? That was not the case in Austin. The defensive play calling I thought was incredible, and it really put Quinn Ewers in a blender. And there were several different things that they were doing. First of all, the corner blitz off the edge that they got on Quinn Ewers that forced the fumble, which gives Georgia, who's struggling on offense, the football in the red zone to be able to go in and punch in an early one. That was catastrophic right off the bat. And then 2, dropping pressures into zone coverage for Quinn Ewers to throw an interception so Georgia could get another one there early in the first half. Those were a couple things that were just incredible from a defensive play calling standpoint, combined with sometimes Georgia would bring it and they'd get home. Sometimes they would only bring 4 and they would be able to get home. All of that set up to a situation where I think Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian were looking around like, man, this isn't working. We just got to take this thing to halftime and come back out. Now, one thing that is worth remembering for people is in the third quarter, Texas did get that game to within 8 points. But there was a couple stats that I wanted to talk to you about and see what you thought. It wasn't like Georgia played a great game offensively.
They didn't.
Right? They turned Carson Beck over 3 times.
They just didn't play as bad as what Texas did.
So if you look at the turnovers, about even. You look at the penalties, even with Georgia on the road, about even. You look at total yardage, about the same. Time of possession, about the same. There were 2 statistics. 1, rushing yards for Georgia, 110 for Texas, 29. Georgia not only dominated the line of scrimmage from their offensive line. But one thing I noticed rewatching the game, they got up to the second and third levels so good against Texas. Their offensive line was able to block those backers and defensive backs. I think if you're Texas in this game, you got to figure out a way to keep Georgia's offensive line to moving up to that second level, because that's what ended up being able to break open the passing game a little bit for Carson Beck. And then the second thing that I was surprised by, Georgia's effectiveness on third down. They were 6 for 17 on third down. Texas, from an offensive standpoint, was 2 for 15. So when Georgia really needed it, they were able to get it. And I Texas in this one's going to have to figure out something on the ground.
Well, Texas has looked, and really outside of that Georgia game, we can talk about the Vandy game. Texas has looked so dominant this year. I know people mentioned the schedule hasn't been the toughest one. They went absolutely handled Texas A&M, just handled them, beat them the country way, as I said yesterday. But even Superman has kryptonite. Is Georgia the kryptonite for this Texas team? Is this the one team that Texas looks at and says, oh, God almighty, not these guys? I don't know. But what I do know is my question for both of the offensive coordinators is, which, Sarkisian, we can talk about Bobo too, because Sark is the OC at Texas. You can say whatever you want. How conservative are you going to be? Mm-hmm. Is this a game that you go into it and you say, look, last time we played, neither one of us played great offensively, but we gave them opportunities by turning the ball over. How confident is Quinn Ewers against this Georgia defense? Been pretty good against everybody else, but against this Georgia defense, he looked mortal to the point. I know he got a little bit beat up where they threw Arch Manning in there, and we saw that wrinkle they threw in with Arch last week. How conservative is Sark going to be to feel it out and say, you know what? Georgia struggled on offense. Our defense may be the best in the country. Texas's defense is playing outstanding right now. But what was their one bugaboo? It was Georgia. So is this one of those situations where when you look across at that other team, that cold chill hits you a little bit? I think it possibly could be. But if I'm Mike Bobo on the other side, and I've been sitting here saying, Georgia, you need to go fast. You need to go up tempo, right? And we've seen them do that a little bit more and more and have some success. We saw it against Georgia Tech a little bit where they had some success. Do you sit here and say, man, we kicked Texas's ass on defense last week. We just can't go in here and screw this up. Plus, we ran it pretty decently, including in the second half to go ahead and ice that game. Remember, Georgia had that big boy drive to ice that game. So who is going to be willing to take the most chances? But here's the beautiful part. You're both in. This isn't a play-in game for the college football playoff. This is a play-in game to see who gets the bye, to see who gets the free win, to see who gets to pass go and collect that $200. If I'm Georgia, we stumped you with vanilla ice cream last time. We decided in the second half we're going to turn around and hand the ball. I'm going to find out if you're going to be able to stop our run game. And then I'll see if Carson Beck can beat you. Maybe then I go fast. But if I'm Texas and I'm Sark, and I know Wisner's been hot lately, he's been running all over the place, how aggressive am I early in this game to maybe get Quinn Ewers into a rhythm? What's a great way to get a pitcher into a rhythm? Throw a lot of fastballs early. Give Quinn Ewers a lot of fastball underneath, maybe on first down, pitch backwards. Don't just run it up in there and hope it happens great because, again, Banks is hurt. Their tackle was in a boot on the sidelines, which means even if he goes out there and play, they're going to shoot him up. They're going to tape him up. I know they gave Quinn Ewers some biotic ankle brace that they just invented in Wakanda or something.
Will Smith.
But I wonder who is going to be the aggressor on offense. It may be both. It may be one. It may be neither. But if I'm Georgia, I'm going to see if you're afraid of me early. And I'm not saying Texas is, but go look at that schedule. One of these things is not like the other, and it was at your house. That's why I'm not ready to make a call on this at all right now. I've got a decent feel on this game, but we're going to have to wait until Friday to make picks.
You going to make a call over there?
I mean, I like Texas. It's
really?
Probably a game I wouldn't bet. I mean, yeah, we can sit here and talk about what Georgia did against Texas, and that game was it was a weird football game if you watched it, but one thing I'm really not afraid right now from a Georgia team I watched, I'm not afraid of their run game. And I feel like I can run the ball against Georgia. I watched multiple weeks where teams, Georgia Tech, UMass, ran the ball against Georgia. And kind of another question I go into, how much are you going to see Arch Manning in this game?
That's a cool question.
Because, obviously it's different when you have Haynes King at quarterback, a mobile guy. Quinn should play, but how much will you see Arch in clutch situations, maybe on third downs, 5 or less, for his run game and his feet, because that's known to hit Georgia. And which Carson Beck shows up? Carson Beck did not play good against Texas, in my opinion. I think their defense won them that football game. I think Texas right now is playing better football than Georgia. I know it's going to come down to health. You have Banks out as a tackle, which is not good. So schematically, I'm interested to see what
Goolsby, we'll see. He wasn't terrible last week, but this is a different animal.
But this is a different Georgia team we're not used to seeing. But it's a finesse football team.
I agree, but remember, we said the same thing going into this Georgia-Texas game the first time. Remember, right? Georgia had murdered Clemson. We're like, oh, here they go. They murdered Tennessee Tech. The Kentucky game. Ugly. You survived that by 1 point. Alabama runs it and throws it down your throat. We're sitting here saying, oh, God, this Georgia team is average, right? Either that or Alabama is worldly. We were saying the same thing, and then Georgia gave up 31 points to Mississippi State the week before at home. Gave up. We watched them play bad in front of a big game. Man, that looks awfully similar to the Georgia team I saw against Georgia Tech. It was almost like they were looking at the SEC championship. So I don't think we can sit here and make the same mistake twice, saying that, oh, this Georgia team's not going to show up and ball when they got to, because they already did it to Texas once. That's what Kirby wants you to think. What you just said is exactly what Kirby Smart is hoping to God that every player in the Texas locker room thinks, oh, man, look at Georgia. Look at the way they played against Georgia Tech. They're softer than they've been in the past. Then they went out to Austin and beat you to death in your own stadium. That's what he hopes. I'm not saying it will happen. I'm not going to fall for that trap.
The only thing I can do is do what I've seen lately from Georgia, right? Teams change throughout weeks. Teams get better. Teams get worse. I've seen Georgia get pushed around on defense up front, and I saw Texas shove it down Texas A&M's throat, whose front is really good. Whose front seven is really good. So right now, what I've seen, and look, I know Kirby, and look, I do this for a living. I'm not in Texas's locker room, so I'm sure their players aren't preaching the same thing I am. But the only thing I can do is say what I've seen, right? And I've watched Georgia get it shoved down their throat the last couple weeks and not be able to run the ball at a high clip. So right now, excuse me if I go for the team that's good at stopping the run and running the ball.
If Georgia hadn't played Texas already, I'd agree with you.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you. But guess what I saw? I saw Texas not be able to run it a lick against Georgia. I saw Georgia run it down Texas's throat. Why are we pretending that game didn't happen?
Well, Texas isn't pretending like it didn't happen.
Texas,
there's no way Texas,
and they may show up and do it. Blaine may be right. I don't know. They may show up and do it.
108 yards of rushing. I don't think that's throwing it down anybody.
Compared to what Texas did to them, go look at what Georgia did in that fourth quarter to Texas. That tells me all I need to know about not underrating Georgia. This Texas team may show up and blow them out. So they may blow them out. I don't know, but I'm not going to bank on it.
What's wrong with Georgia then? Why are they so inconsistent week in, week out?
That's the biggest question.
I think they really got up for Texas. Texas just went to the #1 ranking. No one was giving Georgia a shot. That's why a couple of us on here took Georgia, because we're like, Kirby Smart with his back against the wall, like in Austin, Texas. Like,
so Georgia doesn't get up for a rivalry against Georgia Tech?
There's no way they got up for Georgia. They were already locked into the SEC championship game. There's no way they got up for that game the same way that they got up for Texas. Now, I'm not saying that Georgia Tech's performance was just indicative of Georgia overlooking them. I think they ran the football down their throat. I mean, a couple things. One, I am surprised to see Texas favored in the football game, but I don't think in any way, shape, or form they're scared to go play Georgia again. Actually, I think they're champing at the bit to go play Georgia again.
It may be an advantage for them.
Because of how disappointing that first performance was. I think they'd love a chance to go say, especially knowing you got to know that a loss doesn't knock you out of the college football playoff, right? And maybe possibly doesn't even knock you out of a host spot.
Your season's not over regardless. And let's go back and this, Blaine, I'll give you this nugget as well, because this kind of falls in your favor. Remember, Georgia, by the time they played Texas, already had one loss. We didn't think a 2-loss team the chances weren't great. If you lost 2 games, if you were Georgia, with the schedule you had coming down the pipe. So their backs against the wall were almost doubled with what happened in the Alabama game, because we were sitting there looking and saying, man, if Georgia loses to Texas, look at the stretch. Then they got to go to Ole Miss, a game where they got blown out. Mm-hmm. So their backs were like doubly against the wall.
But again,
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if this game looked anything like the first.
I would agree with that. I would be shocked. And there's no way one team's going to get up 20-0 on the other team in this game. I just don't see it. But for Texas, you have to rush for more than 29 yards in this game, which is why I was thinking the same thing you were on the Arch Manning point. How much do we see Arch Manning? I think a lot of teams are looking at Haynes King King's performance against Georgia, which with Haynes King and Georgia Tech, Georgia, you weren't special, you were just next. And I know they lost the football game, but what that kid was doing on the ground, and I hate that he fumbled at the end, and that was the reason that Georgia was able to go in and tie and force overtime. But Haynes King has been doing this against every team that we've been watching this year. This GT counter lead that they do, and Buster Faulkner and Chris Winkie and those guys is incredible. I think a lot of teams are going to be looking at that saying, wait, especially Texas, wait, we got Arch Manning back here who can run. He was just we're going to do a play breakdown on his Texas A&M touchdown that he scored. A lot of teams are going to be watching that. The question is, will they put him in the most critical moments? If you're down 3 in the third, do you put Arch Manning in to run a 2-platoon quarterback system? If you're up 3, do you put him in to do that? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that either. I just, if it was me, and just knowing the way Sark likes to look at things and Dr. Strange them, on the first 3rd and 1, I would put in Arch Manning with heavy personnel, run play action, take a shot. Dude.
Oh, there will be a goal line package with Arch. They're going to come out.
Or short yardage.
Yeah, right. But, there's going to be something with Arch, and it'll be all situational,
But how much confidence do you have? That's what I'm saying. You're down 3 with 3 minutes left in the third, and it's third and 2. Are you running him out?
I feel like you have enough confidence, or you wouldn't have put him in the A&M game. I really do, because that A&M game was big.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right?
It was the good SEC championship. I agree with that.
Hey, and one of these teams could possibly be hosting a first-round game.
I know.
Like, maybe they'd get knocked down to the 9 through 12, but I think that, like you said, if what you said holds, which is the loser of this game would fall in the 6, 7, 8 range, they could be hosting a first-round playoff
regardless
game in Austin or Athens.
Yeah, regardless. It's going to be nuts. All right, do we want to go Oregon, Penn State, or do we want to go to chat and calls, Dave?
Chat.
Let's go
to Melinda Moe. Says UGA is battle-tested in every way. Texas is not, and that should worry them.
I mean, I think Georgia is more tested this year overall, but Texas, they did play Georgia early in the year. What they did at A&M, regardless of what you think about A&M losing that Auburn game, is very admirable. I think this is an even fight. I do. I think this is 2 heavyweights going at each other. This is the second version of it. Right? This is Ali Frazier, the second version. I really do believe that. That's why it's so exciting to me.
Let's go to Michael. He said this. Let's go to Michael T. Sorry, Mike. He said, trust me, when it comes to this, I like Georgia a lot more because Kirby's defense always seemed to show up in the big moments, and Quinn is not as mobile as you think. What do you think Sark will have to do game plan-wise to get Quinn going?
I think, like I said, I think you give him some rhythm throws early. Not that you can just go out there and get easy throws, but give him some underneath stuff. Maybe go out in some heavier personnel. Helm is the security blanket here. Again, I think he's one of the most underrated players in the country, talking about Texas tight end. What the Helms kid's been able to do is unbelievably impressive. He's an NFL player. He's kind of the security blanket and the momentum getter for Texas. When Texas needs a momentum play, they look to him. You got other guys on the outside. We can talk about the talent that Texas has. There's a lot of it. But if I'm Sark, I'm getting some rhythm throws early because it'll do 2 things. It'll open up the middle to deep third in the pass game, and then it'll help you take some pressure off the run game to maybe get it going the way you weren't able to get it going against Georgia the first time you played.
Let's go to a $5 donation from Donnie P. Appreciate it, Donnie. Says, people don't realize, but the Georgia receivers have been a letdown the entire year. Has the most drops in the nation. I wouldn't be surprised to see them blow it in the biggest moments.
Well, don't forget, they came out against Texas in the first game and took a couple shots and dropped them.
Mm-hmm.
We saw they came out against Alabama, took a couple shots early.
Hey, Georgia Tech last week.
Yeah.
A couple key drops last week.
Can't rely on them. What you're hoping from Georgia, if you're a Georgia fan, is that somehow that magically gets fixed, but Oscar Delp shows up the way that he's been showing up lately and becomes a little bit more of a reliable target, a consistent target, and a playmaker in the red zone. But it's that run game, right? It's the ability to run the ball, to settle Carson down. Because if you notice for Georgia, the games where Carson Beck has had to throw the ball early to win when you're not going tempo, it has not worked out very well. That is where the trouble has been. But when they've been able to run the ball consistently, just like every other quarterback in the world, it slows the pass rush down, and he's able to make those throws. He's able to make the whole shot throw against cover 2. He's able to make that throw between a triangle coverage like he had last week against Georgia Tech, where he put it right in the middle, which was an incredible throw.
Which, if you're Texas on defense, you need to do to Carson Beck what Georgia's defense did to Quinn Ewers in the first go-round. See if you can get pressure on this guy and confuse him without bringing a lot of blitz packages. I just read a stat from the Michigan and Ohio game that Wink Martindale's defense got pressure on Will Howard 48% of the time in that game with a season-low blitz percentage of 5%. Can Texas's defense do that against Carson Beck? We're not bringing a ton of guys because we want to keep guys for the run game and for coverage, but can you still get pressure on Carson Beck? See if he'll throw it to you just like he did in the first game and capitalize this time.
Well, there's two things, David, to that point that I don't think gets talked about enough when we're talking about college football. Pressure is not just about getting sacks. We see this in basketball all the time. It's harder for a jump shooter to not when his feet aren't set, when he's having to move, when he's not at one of his favorite spots. Quarterbacks are the same thing. You know this better than anybody. If I'm moving you around, you're having to throw off platform a bunch. Not that you're not going to make the throws, but you're consistently not going to make or complete the same throws with the same velocity, the same anticipation, the same ability to lead the receiver if your body is going all over the place. The second thing is pre-snap disguises from a blitz standpoint where you show one thing and bring it. You show one thing and you don't bring it. You show something from one side, bring it from the other. You show it from that side and bring it from that side. It doesn't just confuse the quarterback. It's the offensive line too. Because a quarterback that gets confused can get away with it. A left guard that goes the wrong way during a pressure, there is no saving it. The minute he is past you, you are cooked. So it's not just about confusing the quarterback from a coverage standpoint, or they're bringing this guy, so this is going to be open. This is where the hot is. This is where the hot isn't. It's confusing the offensive line because what is the quickest way to the king? Through the castle. You get past the castle, you get to the king. That's the way it'll always be.
All right, let's go to the Big Ten championship game here. Oregon now going to play Penn State after Michigan knocked off the Buckeyes. That line is -3.5 right now for Oregon. Before we get to breaking down the game, I've only run into one Penn State fan here in person in the office since this, and he was thrilled to be going to the Big Ten championship game.
I bet.
Is it, well, you say that, but is there any, like, it seemed like Penn State was right there in that 4, 5, 6 range. They were going to be hosting in Happy Valley even if they sat this one out and the Buckeyes went and played a rematch to Oregon. Is there any thought in your mind that if Penn State loses this game to Oregon, goes to 11-2, that now you might have to travel in the first round?
Maybe if it's ugly. If the committee's actually going to take these games and like judge where the team should be after the way they play in the conference championship game, if it's ugly to Oregon, I think there's a possibility of that happening. I don't think it's very likely. But when I look at Penn State, I wonder, and the Penn State fans in the chat, the people on the phone lines, it should be open. How do you feel about playing Oregon compared to playing Ohio State or Michigan? Because we talk about the mental block that it seems Ohio State has versus Michigan now. It seems the Penn State mental block is for Ohio State and Michigan, not Oregon. Do they view Oregon through the same prism as they do the big games against Ohio State and Michigan that they haven't been able to win in the past when you were all in the Big Ten East? I don't know the answer to that question. But I do know this. If you're Andy Kotelnicki, you cannot do what you did against Ohio State. I don't care if you get up 24-0 in the first half. You got up, 10-0? To Ohio State, and you took your ball, you took all the creativity out of it, and you tried to sit on the ball and take the air out of the ball. You cannot do that. You have got to go be you. And he's a hell of a play caller. He knows more about offense than I'll ever know. I don't know everything, but I do know this Penn State team has been cooking when they are the aggressor, when they are being creative. We saw it against West Virginia, even in the first game of the year, taking shots down the field, being aggressive. I think that's who Drew Aller really is. So regardless for Penn State, learn from your mistake against Ohio State. And I'm not just saying if you get up. If it's tied 7-7, if you're down 10-3, you have got to continue to put your foot on the pedal on offense. Take your shots down the field. Don't just rely on the run game and hope to God the defense wins it. That's what you did against Ohio State. That is a death sentence. That is winning fentanyl for this football team. I would go out and I would take shots early. I'd be like an alcoholic at a wedding. I'm drunk before anybody shows up.
So, Blaine, what do you think here mentally for Penn State? Because there had to be this element that they were sort of settled into the first round of the playoffs. We're not going to be able to make the Big Ten championship game. The one huge game we played this year to the Buckeyes at home, we lost. But now that's kind of flipped in that, wait, we're going to get another huge game against the only team in college football that's undefeated before the playoffs even start. And that's going to be offset by the fact that, well, if you win, you can actually get a bye. So you wouldn't even be playing in the first round of the playoffs. this would be sort of your first round of the playoffs. If you lose, though, do you think they're still protected to be able to host in Happy Valley?
That's what we've heard, right? We can only go off what we heard. If I'm Penn State, man, you got everything in front of you. Who would not want this opportunity? You're about to go play the number one team in the nation in your conference championship game. If you're a gamer, this is what you want. If you're a dog, this is what you want. If not, that other stuff, I don't even like entering that headspace because it's soft to me. When it comes to this game, it's a Drew Aller game. Which guy will show up? Is it the Drew Aller everybody's been hyping up? The big moments between him and Dylan Gabriel, because you can look at both these teams, and they're kind of even in a lot of ways. Warren, I think, is one of the best players in college football. Kind of reminds me of Taysom Hill. And he's a Singleton, great back. But the weapons Oregon has, this is going to come down the difference maker position, and that's going to be the quarterback position. Which quarterback plays better in this game?
And when I look at Oregon offensively, you may stop them early, but eventually, with as good as Will Stein is, of supplementing maybe a lack of a run game at time with the short passing, you look at Tez, you talk about tight ends. Terrence Ferguson's one of the best in the country that not enough people talk about as well. Him and the Texas tight end Helm that I mentioned. Eventually, Oregon's going to find a way to score. So even if you're Penn State and we get halfway through the second quarter and it's 7-7 and both offenses are struggling, I'm telling you, you have got to stay creative. You have got to stay aggressive. This game needs to look like the USC game for Penn State. Whatever you got to do to get the ball to Tyler Warren, not just to get him down there. We saw against Ohio State. Tyler Warren, he'd take them all the way down there. Then they just forget. They'd get red zone Alzheimer's and just totally forget that Tyler Warren is a guy they need to lean on. And then use him as a counter. Dan Lanning knows he has to try and eliminate Tyler Warren. If he eliminates Tyler Warren, he takes a lot out of the Penn State offense. But use that against them. Know that Oregon's going to do that. Know that Oregon's going to be following him around like somebody that's in love for the first time in middle school. That's what it's going to look like. So you have your built-in plays to him. You have your counters off of it. I'm very excited to see which Oregon team shows up in this game too. Because Oregon is either going to get that bye, we talk about Penn State doing it, and be the top seed overall, or they're going to lose this game and be the fifth seed that I think would knock Notre Dame to the sixth seed. I just wonder if you're Penn State. In the back of your mind, are Penn State fans worried, hey, man, if we lose this game, do we have to play Ohio State in the first round? I wonder how much of that thought.
Hopefully not. I hope we don't get conference.
I don't think they would do that. I don't think the committee would do that.
We did talk about the two programs across the country that benefit the most from eliminating divisions in their conference, Ole Miss and Penn State. Now we're seeing them go to their conference championship game. Just to put a bow on it, Penn State will beat Oregon if they do what?
Stay aggressive and force turnovers.
What do you think?
Get to Dylan Gabriel, get to him early.
Okay. I'll say rush for over 200 yards.
Yeah.
So and a combination of all that would be a good recipe.
Dad, you probably win by 7 to 10. Yeah, probably winning by at least 10.
All right. Go to the chat real quick.
Let's go to a $10 donation from Marcus McCants. What's up, man? He says, why does it seem like it's okay to put South Carolina over Bama when last year it wasn't okay to put Alabama over Texas because they had to have a hand in the win?
Oh, you ain't got to convince me. I was saying the same thing last year. Say what you want about me, but it's consistent energy.
Let's go to Malachi T. What's up, man? He says, Jake, didn't you say the same thing about Texas A&M out-toughing Texas the week before, and how did that look?
I didn't say. I don't think I said that Texas A&M would out-tough them. What I was worried about with Texas was Quinn Ewers' mobility within the pocket with that hurt ankle. That's why I was surprised to see him so healthy and moving around that way. I thought Texas A&M could use the momentum of being quote-unquote little brother and the farming school, and we saw all that build up to match the intensity of Texas. But I'm not going to sit here and act like I wasn't surprised over what happened. Watching Texas physically whip A&M in every aspect of it, and outside of some hope, even after blocking a punt, A&M couldn't do anything in that type of game, I think shows you why Texas is where they're at, because they are tough.
All right, guys, I got the phone lines up here. Let's get those feet chopping. We're going to go to Cole in College Station for the first caller of the week. What's up, Cole?
Hey, guys. I need some reassurance from Jake. Sitting there in Kyle Field on Saturday was rough. Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the Notre Dame game. You're sitting there, and as time runs out, the situations in your head that are required for a win just keep getting more and more outlandish, and that's a rough way to bookend the regular season.
Well, Cole, here's what I'll say. It's Mike Elko's first year. Him having you guys in this spot I'll continue to say what I said before the game. I think the future is very bright in College Station. He's going to continue to make y'all better. He'll use this as a lesson. What I don't want to see happen is for A&M fans to say, oh, no, Mike Elko is just the same thing as we've gotten. Because I don't think that's true. I don't think that's the case. I don't think you give up on Marcel Reed either. But it is disheartening for a couple reasons. One, you blew a huge opportunity. You may never have an opportunity that good again with that game being at home. You're never going to play Texas for the first time in over a decade again. So you don't get that back. And then on the other hand, it's the way they beat you. You know, sometimes it's not just that you lose. It's the way you lost. There was nothing fluky about that game. There was no lucky breaks. There was no, oh, the refs screwed us. There was no, oh, they're not calling holding penalties. Texas went into your trap, took over your trap, and did it physically and shut it down on offense. Second half, that was peanut butter and jelly, buddy. That was vanilla ice cream because they knew defensively they could shut you guys down regardless of what you tried to do. So it's okay to be hurt. You got to lay down and bleed a while. If you're an A&M fan, it sucks because you may never get this type of opportunity again. We'll see. But with Mike Elko, you know, they said Patches O'Houlihan at the helm. They can be dangerous. I think you got your Patches O'Houlihan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Cole. Man. All right, let's go to 702 Gambler in Las Vegas. What's up, 702?
How you guys doing, man?
What's up, man?
What's up?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I have this theory about Clemson not making the playoff, even if they win the ACC.
Okay, go. Yeah, say it.
Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I think if they're ranked behind Arizona State tomorrow, if Arizona State and Boise went out, I could see both of them getting buys and see Clemson really being on the outside looking in. And I don't know, man, that's kind of tough. Clemson with 3 losses going against Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. I think Georgia's going to lose. So, I mean, that's 5 3-loss teams fighting for the 11 and the 12 seed. So,
well, here's what I would say, 702, and I'm glad you brought this up because I think there's only one way this happens. And I think the only way that were to happen, because remember, there's the 5 automatic bids, okay, that we get. Take Notre Dame out of the equation. So the top 4 conferences, right, get the buys. The 5th, you get an automatic bid, and your seating can be wherever. You're not locked into the 5th. Notre Dame's probably going to get that. The only way I see if Clemson beats SMU in the ACC championship game that Clemson wouldn't get in is if the committee said, you know what, the ACC isn't one of the top 5 conferences. We've got the Mountain West and then the American where Army is playing Tulane. But since Tulane lost, I think that was a very low chance to begin with. But since Tulane lost to Memphis, regardless of what I think happens with the Army-Tulane game, I don't think it's possible or probable. But it is a fun scenario. I think the better question is, if Clemson does beat SMU in the ACC championship game and Boise State beats UNLV, does Boise State get that top 4 spot and Clemson doesn't? Or we see with the Big 12, because, again, Arizona State or Ohio State, they both only have 2 losses. So that winner will only have 2 losses compared to Clemson having 3 losses. So I think the better question is, could they drop to that 5th automatic bid that doesn't lock them into a bye in a top 4 seed? Not will they drop all the way out. But I love it. And by the way, having that handle and being in Vegas, that's a dangerous game, my friend.
Yeah, it is. Thanks for taking my call. Last little nugget for you guys to think about is, I know Jake's probably going to go crazy on this, but I think Georgia's also in trouble if they have a bad game this weekend.
Really?
It's got to be close and competitive. Yeah.
You think of being out the playoff or
just
traveling?
hosting?
I think if they lose bad, they're in trouble because, they were down big to Georgia Tech, down big to Bama, lost ugly to Ole Miss. I mean, if they lose by 15, 16 points and it's not competitive,
But 702, Joe Tessitore guaranteed me on the telecast of the Georgia Tech game that they would be in.
There would have to be, like, the teams they would have to put in front of Georgia. You think you've seen Kirby Smart get pissed off? Like, you think you've seen him get upset? You think Lane Kiffin's complaining now? Let that happen, and it will be the nuclear warfare of college football playoff reactions if that were to happen.
Thanks for calling in, man.
Call in again.
Appreciate it. Which also, I think we should live stream Selection Sunday. Should we?
Let's do it.
Ask him in the chat. Should we live stream Selection
Should we
Sunday?
live stream it?
Y'all call in next week, too, after
We can
Selection
just
Sunday.
push the Sunday recap back and do it.
Yeah, we could do that. All right, let's go to Tom in Minnesota. Tom, what's going on today, buddy?
Doing good, boys. How are you all doing?
What's up, man?
Hey, first off, yes, you should totally live stream Selection Sunday.
Okay. We're doing it. Tom said we're doing it.
So first off, I think the only way the college football playoffs can mess this up is if they have SEC versus SEC and Big Ten versus Big Ten in the first round.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the only way they can mess this up.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with that Penn State fan here at the office. But the question is, if you put a responsibility on the committee to also keep in mind the matchups, then you're just asking for corruption, right? Or do we just say the people in that room should be so smart that they should be thinking about that simultaneous to the
You can't
really?
You can't have both. But the question is, which would you rather have? Because if we're talking about not keeping teams out, if we're talking about the 12 that should be in, if we all agree these 12 should be in, which we're not going to all agree that, but let's just play this game. Would you rather them say, you know what? Let's get the matchups that are conference against another conference.
Yes.
As opposed to, I would.
That's what I want.
Like that's what I would. I would be willing to sacrifice a little bit of objectivity when it comes to that and getting those matchups, as opposed to, like I said, Penn State playing Ohio State again.
But if you open that door,
like you do, I get it. No,
you're the matchmaker for the bracket.
I get it. I get it. I've seen it go both ways. Like, I look at in college basketball, I think they do a really good job of not doing too much of that, putting teams from the same conference in the quadrant a bunch. You get some, but they do have some subjective matchups. It's amazing how many coaches that used to coach at a smaller school that are at a bigger school are matched up with that smaller school in the first round. But in college baseball last year, when you look at the way it worked out for the super regionals, hell, they put most of the SEC against each other in the super regionals. I know
Which that can be fun too.
Every sport's different.
Styles make fight a bunch of different styles.
I just want to see SEC play other conferences.
Yeah. I do too. But if it does end up being that, Georgia now has to travel and they're going to go to Knoxville to play Tennessee at home, even when we just saw Tennessee go and play Georgia in Athens. Of course, we're all still going to watch, and there could be an interesting element to that. I just would rather.
Well, the number, you have to look at the numbers too. The volume of the amount of teams from one conference that are getting in.
True.
I mean, if you had 5 teams coming in from the Big Ten, you got to play.
Appreciate it, Tom. All right, let's go to Charlie in Pennsylvania. What's up, Charlie?
Hey, Coney, how about our Wolverines? But anyway, real quick, what a game. I've never been prouder. I told you if we started Orgy and ran it down their throat, we could push them off the field. I told you that. Now, I have never been more proud of a Michigan quarterback than Davis. He stepped up.
Mm-hmm.
But if we
I don't know if he stepped up. I think he just didn't step in it.
Yeah,
outside of the one time
we're talking about the Michigan offense.
But he made some big-time throws at a critical point, and I didn't expect that. Now, Orgy ran 3 times for 33 yards. So if he has 4 or 5 more carries, he may get 100 yards.
Yeah.
There was one point I was thinking about after that one big run he had. I was saying, man, can we get a couple more of those? Especially.
Well, I kept saying, why are Davis Warren and Orgy in the game at the same time? I tried to tell you.
Bryce Underwood saw Orgy. I think he's going somewhere else.
I feel bad for guys like Chad Henne. Chad Henne, one of the greatest quarterbacks in Michigan history, couldn't beat the Buckeyes, and I watched Davis Warren's performance get a win.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it was great. It was great. Jake said last week they should do a package with both of them, and I agreed with you, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I just watching that game. At first I was watching like, all right, Ohio State turned it over early. Michigan's up 7-3, whatever. Then like halfway through the second quarter, I'm like, dude, this just smells funny. Like Ohio State's getting pushed around up front. Then they scored right before half, and I'm like, all right, it's 10-10. At that point, I was like, is Ohio State going to cover the 19? Because I think they're going to come out and just gravity's going to take effect. Buddy, with about 2 minutes to go in the third quarter, then I started thinking about what you were thinking about, Cone, because it started to get real choppy.
It just feels like Ohio State tries to beat Michigan the way Michigan.
They fall for the trap. They fell in the trap.
Why?
Good.
Like, know who you are.
Because they've got there's a mental block for Ohio State right now. That's why I said they're literally the fat kid goalie from the Big Green movie when he sees him coming up with the ball. Like, that's what they see. He's, oh my God, they're werewolves this time. Oh no, this time, they're the Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
It's one thing after another.
I want to say 2 quick points, and I'm going to let you guys go. I know you got a lot to talk about today. So first thing, Gus Johnson was killing me. I had to turn the sound off.
Bro,
gotta go.
Relax, David.
Gotta go.
That dog, he slobs over Ohio State so much. It's incredible. It really is. I've got no dog in the fight. He is the Gary Danielson of y'all's rivalry. Because whenever Auburn would play Alabama on CBS, Gary Danielson was basically prostituting himself.
Judkins could get 4 yards, and you thought of an 80-yard play.
Yeah, he started speaking in tongues one time, like a reptilian.
Appreciate it, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, man. All right, let's go to Tyler in Jacksonville. What's up, Tyler?
Hey, fellas, real quick, South Carolina fan here. I got some reasons why they should be in the playoff.
Yes.
All right, hey, hold on, Tyler, hold on. Is this Tyler from Jacksonville or Tyler from Spartanburg?
Tyler from Jacksonville.
Okay.
It's Tyler from Jacksonville.
All right, I'm just making
David
sure.
already said
just making sure.
Listen.
Yeah. Oh, get the fat out of your ears.
So South Carolina, I texted Crane Brothers this. Flip South Carolina and Alabama's schedule for the whole season. South Carolina beats Bama, but then they go 4-2. Bama goes 6-0 with 3 ranked victories, and they would have beaten the top 12 Auburn team at Auburn. Please don't tell me that Alabama doesn't jump South Carolina in the rankings. Also, what is the number one rule? What is the number one rule in college football for the last 30 years? The later the loss, the bigger the punishment. Why all of a sudden is now that isn't the case, that you can lose games late because there's a bigger playoff field and you don't get punished more for it than if you lost games earlier in the season. And the last point, why once the college football playoff rankings came out, why all of a sudden is head-to-head the gold standard? A team can't jump over another team within the ranking period of the last month. During the regular season, in the early part, if a team plays a big game and beats a ranked opponent, they'll jump another guy 2 or 3 spots, even though the team in front of them won their game against a lesser opponent. So that makes the Clemson game more favorable than an Auburn win or a Mississippi State win by Ole Miss.
Okay. All right, Tyler. First off, thank you for calling in. I'm about to tell you one of the main things that I can tell you all those reasons you listed. They don't think about it the way I think about it. I'm telling you what I think. I don't know what the committee is going to do. Would they put Alabama with Nick Saban going on that run over South Carolina? Yes. 100% yes. Without Nick Saban, I don't know yet, but probably they're going to gas Alabama up because it's good financially for them, and I understand it. Not that it's bad if South Carolina's good, but I think if you've watched college football over the past 20 years, you would agree with me, even if you're an Alabama fan. The second point you made, as far as contradictions with the way they do head-to-head, you're exactly right. I'll one-up you. Florida State didn't lose a game, dog.
Not one.
They didn't lose one game and got left out. So I don't put anything past these people. So I agree with you on that. But the way I look at it, the way that Jake looks at it is, I look at the first game of the year through the last game of the year. We can't play this, let's flip the schedules, because that didn't happen. Alabama played South Carolina straight up, and they beat them. There is no way, if we were talking about, I use the example of, if South Carolina was 10-2 and Alabama was 9-3, I could buy into, even if South Carolina lost to Alabama, putting South Carolina ahead of them because they had a better win-loss record and a better strength of schedule. You could talk me into that, but that's not the situation we're in. South Carolina is 9-3. Alabama is 9-3. They played each other. Alabama won that game. So even if Alabama faltered more down the stretch than South Carolina, they still ended up with the same record. But I will not tell you you're wrong, Tyler, about them putting Alabama ahead of South Carolina if it was reversed, and then them putting teams that has lost ahead of the team that beat them. You're right on both those accounts, but I'm talking about the way I would do it,
Which,
brother.
Tyler, can you imagine if it was coming down to South Carolina and Missouri at 9-3, and Missouri was trying to politic their way into the college football playoff over South Carolina? What would you be saying?
Oh, I would be totally on the same size of Bama. I text the Crane brothers, and I said that because I think Bama still has the swag of Saban on them when really DeBoer is ruining the team, and it'll probably be all the fluff will be off of them by the end of next year.
Well, that's what I'm interested to see without the Saban effect. That's why I brought it up earlier in the show. But, Tyler, I tell you what, you're doing a hell of a job politicking for your team. You're a better surrogate than Mark Cuban could have ever been for anybody.
And they might get in. We'll see.
Hey, keep fighting
to do something funny. Look, they really could.
Look, if you're a South Carolina fan, you keep fighting it.
Plead your case,
You
man.
scream head to head, doesn't matter. You sit in front. Well, don't do that. But you protest in your own way, the safe way.
And you keep doing it on Crane and Company.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, let's go to Jimbo in New York. Pongo alert. Jimbo, what's going on, buddy?
He's still drunk.
3 words for you. I told you.
Dude, you called it with Syracuse. You called it. You absolutely called it. But I wonder who picked Syracuse to beat Miami last week. I don't know. Me.
You did, and I give you credit for that. That's why I don't dog you for the prediction you made on that day back when you were doing the ACC picks anymore, because I appreciate that. But by the way, my voice is still I'm still trying to gain my voice back because I pretty much lost it all day yesterday. So
dude, how nervous were you, Jimbo? How nervous were you halfway through the first quarter of that game? Because it looked like y'all were about to get run out of the yard.
Bro, it was the way he caught the pass. That third touchdown pass that put him up 20-0. I'm like, dude, you can't just let him do that to you. Like, Fran Brown's gonna get on these dudes, man. But I just want to tell you, man, that experience, that's something I'm going to be telling my grandkids about 40 years from now. I even rushed the field too. I got selfies with the defensive coordinator, Elijah Robinson. I got selfies with a Rondé Gatson, man. I'm like, this security guard looking at me, bro, you ain't stopping me. I'm getting on this field.
Oh, I've seen you, Jimbo. You put your hand in the ground there. You're making the play.
A fellow guy who also picked Syracuse to win. What was your thoughts on thoughts on the Miami mascot hitting on old girl?
Bro, you got no riz, man. And I know Ashley. Ashley's a good reporter too, but she called foul on that dude. Literally.
Can you blame him though?
I mean, look, boy shot his shot.
I wonder if he took the Irish.
I mean, you know why I'm here? I'm here because my dad took a chance. I mean, who knows?
There you go. True.
What a great story. You turned him down when he was the mascot. Takes off the mascot head. Dude looks like Fabio.
I bet they end up dating for 6 months.
They probably do.
Jimbo, I guess Kyle McCord wasn't the problem in Columbus.
It's always got to bring it back.
Not bad for a Honda, right?
Hey, appreciate it.
The other thing I want to say in all seriousness, though, you guys actually deserve credit for this, because those tickets that I bought them back in July for myself and 5 of my close friends from college. I even use your code too, though. Like, even back
that
when
game time code, baby.
Yeah. Our program was all the way down back in 2022, and honestly, when I started watching you guys gave me motivation to get even further into college football. And so I not only did this for Syracuse, I did it for you guys. I did it for everybody in the Booster Club too, though.
Well, Jimbo, we love you, buddy. I couldn't be happier for you, my friend. Y'all deserve it. Now go watch the basketball team be bad. It doesn't matter anymore.
Thanks, buddy. Great win.
We find a way to beat Tennessee. Wow.
Yeah, good luck.
We'll see.
Melo's kid ain't there yet.
All right, anybody else on the line? Ryan, Kirk, Jake, all y'all, call in tomorrow, please. We'll get to y'all first.
All right, let's get the bets, and we're going to get back to this chat. All right, tonight, first off, quick story. Yesterday, on the way home from Tupelo, finally get back into Tennessee. Why are you making that face, dog? This ain't about you. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about you. So we get back in Tennessee. Me and my wife, she likes to do the anytime touchdown score bets for the NFL. Your boy takes a 3-man first touchdown score, then a Christian McCaffrey anytime. So I had Mark Andrews' first touchdown score. I had Kyron Williams' first touchdown score, and I had Mike Evans'
all those
first touchdown. The first 3 hit. The Niners played the night game last night, Sunday Night Football. So I hit all those 3. The total to win was like $3,300. I could cash out for $1,600. So I'm thinking about it. My wife's like, don't cash out. So immediately I'm thinking about cashing out. And so I was like, you know what? I need to call Blaine. So I call Blaine, answers the phone, and I tell him the situation, instantly says cash out. Mm-hmm. You need to cash out, which is what I thought initially. So I cash out. I'm like, all right, look, I'll throw 100 on like a Christian McCaffrey 2+ touchdown or something. You know, if that hits, I won't feel as bad about cashing out. Oh, boy goes down like a sweet muffin in the
I
first
immediately
half.
thought of you.
Oh, dude. I was Reed was upstairs, like, finishing up, putting some dolls away in the nursery. I was like, Reed, he's hurt. It's his Achilles.
Good.
You
So,
get 3 first touchdown scores immediately.
Immediately cash out.
Nice hit.
Immediately, because it's always the last leg. And literally, it would have got me. So tonight, Browns, Broncos, under 41.5, minus 112. Then Nick Chubb, anytime touchdown at plus 160. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, first touchdown score tonight, boys, David.
Wrong.
Joke's on you.
Wrong.
Njoku.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
First touchdown score.
Oh, you're
Okay.
going to?
I think you're up next, Dave.
well, famous Jameis, he always finds a way, doesn't he? So I'm going to take Browns plus 6.5, minus 115. And then go ahead and give me that largest lead, under 14.5.
Back to the well.
Minus 130. Going back again.
That's a
Trying
really
to find
good
that
bet.
chick from the Ring movie.
All right, bring my bets up here. Cleveland defense, first touchdown score.
Wow.
Plus 4,500.
Plus
Miles
4,500.
Garrett, swim move,
Yeah.
strip sack, pick up, touchdown.
I'm going to have to put a 10-piece on.
Then I'm going Nick Chubb anytime touchdown because I played Deebo Samuel instead of Nick Chubb in fantasy, and what a mistake that was.
Are you going to lose? Are you out?
Yeah, I'm out.
Golly,
I'm
first
out.
round exit.
You're out?
Yep.
And you got
Most
on
points-
Man, I put up 171 this week.
Most points in the league.
All right, Ace is going to take the over.
Oh, y'all
in the
taking
Browns
Nick
Broncos
Chubb to
game,
score?
which is not going to happen. But he's also going to take Nick Chubb anytime touchdown. That's three different odds on that. That's pretty good. All within the plus 155 to 165 range. All right, Shadamus.
All right, let's get these donations. If you donate today, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate it on this side. Let's go to a $2 donation from the Rocky Mountain Man. He says, Ryan Day needs to leave OSU now. Give me some of that Rhett Lashley.
Rhett Lashley in Ohio State. Look, I don't think Rhett's going anywhere. The Ryan Day thing, I don't know, man. We got to see. If you go out in the first round, if that works out and they go up to play Tennessee and they go out in the first round, they might actually fire you, dog.
You should be fired.
By the way, I don't know if you saw Sam Pittman is coming back next year.
Yep.
Smart move overall by Arkansas because his contract is up next year, so you don't have to pay a buyout. And I'd be more worried about the coordinators if I were an Arkansas fan. You've seen Petrino's name linked to Charlotte. Travis Williams, look at the UCF job. Also, App State just opened up. Sean Clark.
I saw that too.
$5 donation from 2 Cranes, 1 Cone. I would not be surprised if the committee somehow backdoors Alabama into the 8 seed and a home game. Go Irish. Jake still owes me merch.
I got you.
8 seed in a home game?
Yeah, there's no way that happens.
$5 donation from Rye. Appreciate it, man. Who do you think should replace Neil Brown? Also, how about them West Virginia Hoops beating Gonzaga and
big.
Arizona in overtime?
No, West Virginia's been playing really well. Oklahoma basketball's been playing really well, kind of surprising some people, and they still haven't got the Jaden Jones kid back. As far as who's going to get the West Virginia job, Signetti's, I think that's his alma mater, is West Virginia, but he's locked up. They ain't going to let him out at Indiana, which was a smart move by them. I think Dan Mullen's a really good fit at West Virginia, man.
That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting. I think there's, a couple young guys. You see Jamie Chadwell as well from that area over there. I think is another name to watch out for. I really like Mullen and Chadwell, man. John Summerall from Tulane's another guy to keep an eye on. I'm interested to see which direction they go after firing an offensive-minded coach. Do they go to the defensive side next? I don't know.
$2 donation from CE. What's up, brother? Appreciate it. He says, not a Michigan fan, but happy for you, Cone. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Let's go to a $5 donation from Caleb Curry. He says, ultimate conspiracy theory time. Indiana and ACC losers left out. All 3-loss SEC teams get in. Sounds insane, but they did pull the rug on the FSU last year, and SEC equals dollar bills.
Well, I will put nothing past them. But like I said earlier, all I ask, and you talked about them pulling the rug out from FSU the last week, whatever the teams that aren't playing this week, the order you have them, like if Bama's in front of South Carolina, I don't know if Clemson winning that game is enough to put South Carolina in front of Bama. But on that other token, if South Carolina's in front of Bama and Clemson loses, that shouldn't move South Carolina behind Bama. Wherever you have them, I'm not saying the number, but the order. Who's in front of who? Please, if they're not playing, don't pull a fast one. Don't do it. And I know you're going to do it. It's just like all the Survivor shows when it's like the other person wins, or like they do like all the shows where you think one thing's going to happen and they do the other to cause the most reaction. That's what worries me.
$5 donation from JD. Appreciate it, man. 4 straight years of celebration, ancestral babies made. I'm worried the state of Alabama may be the new Hills Have Eyes cast in the future.
Sick of it, dog.
$20 donation from David. Appreciate it. Blaine, give me your honest thoughts on Florida football right now. You were convinced that we'd crash and burn, and to be fair, I guess I was too. We're both proven wrong, and I'm not celebrating 7-5, but progress. Well, it sounds like you're celebrating 7-5 to me. But thank y'all thank y'all for covering. I really appreciate that. Let's go for the man from Texas with a $17 donation. Remember that Jake has said for the 3 months that Texas wouldn't play as tough as Texas A&M. And kudos for Sark for not letting his players stomp on the logo, which kept the fight from breaking out.
Yeah, no, Texas proved
But they did it in Ann Arbor.
Yeah,
they did it in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, they
someone sent me the video.
Y'all know me. I'll be the first one if I was wrong about something to say it. I think Texas flexed on them, and that's why Texas is where they're at. Not because of a fancy offense or a cool passing game. It's because of the line of scrimmage.
$2 donation from Trenches. Appreciate it, man. Colby Young has a huge welcome back game in Atlanta. It's time to get going.
They need it.
$5 donation from Steve Miller. I love your band. He says, I called 8-4 and they finished 7-5 and planted their flag in the toilet bowl. Go Blue.
Yeah, it's a lot of flag planting.
Let's go to a $2 donation from Chris P. Bacon Gaming. He says, what if Georgia beats Texas and Penn State wins?
If Georgia beats Texas and Penn State wins, I think that there's a chance no, Penn State will be the 1 seed overall. Penn State would take over for Oregon. I still think Georgia would be the 2 seed. The SEC would be the 2nd. I think then, to Cone's point, Notre Dame would not be the 5 seed. Oregon would be the 5 seed. Notre Dame would go to 6. And then I think Texas would be at 7. That's what I said earlier. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. $5 donation from S. Boone. When is Cristobal's seat going to get hot? Who cares how good of a recruiter he is? It's Miami and the NIL money will bring in the players.
Look, we compared it to LSU on the recap, and then all of a sudden a bunch of other people started doing it because it's a great comparison, Blaine. You brought it up. I want to see if Miami makes the playoff or not. Because if they don't, I'm going to have some words for Mario Cristobal.
$5 donation. You hear that, Mario? It's coming. $5 donation from Angelo. Appreciate it, man. Can I get a Go Dogs from Eastern Pennsylvania? Get an OT win over Phillipsburg, New Jersey is the best Turkey Day rivalry in the country.
Now, which Go Dogs you mean getting an overtime win? I thought maybe you were a Georgia fan up there talking about beating Georgia Tech, but no, Go Dogs, man.
All right, let's go to a $5 donation from CHS53. Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas get to sit in our boats drinking margs while Ole Miss, Bama, and SEC and South Carolina beat each other just to go get a seat. As a VAFL, it's heaven. Go Big Orange.
Like Tennessee, you can't hurt them right now.
No.
You can't hurt them. I mean, I think they're going to host regardless. I'm talking about Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Like, I think the worst they would be is 8, which is the last host spot. So if you're Tennessee, really, if you're Georgia and Texas, I wonder how many Georgia and Texas fans, obviously I know you guys want to win. Texas, first year in the SEC, they want to win the SEC championship, talk about planting the flag. But how many Texas and Georgia fans are like, just nobody get hurt? Just don't get hurt.
Let's go to $2 donation from Colson. Appreciate it, man. He says, I don't think we could beat Ohio State, much less than Oregon. I believe he's talking about Penn State.
Yeah.
Let's go to $5 donation from The New Life. Appreciate it, man. Arizona State and SMU wouldn't get out of the first round if they weren't getting a bye.
I mean, I'd have to see that to play. Maybe. I mean, if we're talking about them playing the 12 seed, I think that's asinine because one of them would be playing the 12 seed if it, worked out that way. But I don't know. I want to make sure and Arizona, this year's different, man. Like, I think Arizona State and SMU could win a first-round game. I really believe that.
Let's go to a $5 donation from I'm Caned Up. He says, fellas, I don't see Miami in your top 12. Tell me why.
Because they don't deserve to be. I mean...
Tomorrow's going to be interesting.
Tomorrow's going
to be interesting when the playoff committee ranks them.
Yeah, I just don't think Miami. Who have they beaten? Who has Miami beaten?
The win over Florida does look better.
It looks better, but you're going to beat your chest over that.
But yeah,
over a 7-5 team, and you didn't even make the ACC championship. You could argue as the worst conference of the Big Power Four, or you could say is the second worst, and you don't even make it out of that. That's why you know what I was thinking the whole time that Georgia Tech game? How hard Miami fans were pulling for Georgia Tech to win that Georgia game. Because now that makes that loss look so much better for Miami. It turns it into a true quality loss, but that didn't end up happening.
Which I think it looks better to people like us who watch Georgia Tech every week, right? Like if that was your first time seeing Georgia Tech, maybe that was surprising. It wasn't that surprising to me. But look, Miami still got a shot.
No, they still got a shot. I just don't think it should be in the top 12.
A $5 donation from David's favorite Badger. Sebastian, the Ibis, you can't get rejected like that on national TV. Call me. Mascots need to stick together.
Ew.
Ladies love me. I got game like EA. Ask Cunt.
Is that humping badger?
Yeah. Why
Get
do you always
back in the
listen?
basics,
The duck's not
man.
into you. The ibis or whatever, that, dyslexic pelican, whatever the animal is.
$5 donation from Jack. Appreciate it. Do y'all see any TCU-type teams in the college football playoff? Teams like that get blown out by a real challenge, and who is most likely that team?
I got to see who gets in first. I just can't comment on that till everybody gets in.
$5 donation from David S. Appreciate it. Ole Miss at 12. You can't possibly justify this. As UT Parking said, they have 3 unranked losses.
Like, I can justify it because look at who they have beaten when compared to other teams. Like, you can't just sit here and say, this team doesn't belong here, and then just stop and pause. It's about who is around them. So that's the way I defend it, because context matters.
$2 donation from Kobe Anderson Harris. He says, Notre Dame and Penn State over Georgia is an absolute travesty.
It's one loss, man. Win-loss records got to matter.
An absolute travesty? Or is it like just a travesty?
Yeah, that's a big difference.
This is an absolute travesty.
Kobe, if it's absolute, you need to call in. We need to
$2 donation. I'm trying to get through these from the Serve. Last week of classes, next week finals. Can't wait, fellas. Appreciate the show. $5 donation from Zach. Says, how about SEC, Big Ten, and ACC all got first-year members in the championship, as there's some more competitive disparity than we thought.
It's like the NHL. The expansion team always wins. You notice that?
$2 donation from TJ. Appreciate it. No way he's a real Kane. If he took a knee, we would never do that. $5 donation from David Cohn for Prez. Vols need that home game, baby. I hope the chips keep falling our way, but there's nobody in the top 10 I'm scared of.
I'd love to go to
Bring them on.
Nobody?
$5 donation from SMU.
Let them have their minute.
The $5 donation from SMU says, Jake, I will never forget what you did for us. Just know that the people will remember.
Listen, all I want is a statue that looks better than Dwayne Wade's. That's all I'm asking.
$2 donation from Cuse. Ashley definitely called foul on Sebastian the Ibis. $5 donation from Laura. Jake, how much beef jerky do you need to become our new DC? JK, proud of my Red Raiders. First 8-win season since the late, great Coach Leach.
For Joey McGuire, just a couple 100 pounds.
$5 donation, last donation of the day from The Buff. He said, hey, guys, I don't know if you saw this. Did y'all see Deion Sanders walk Jimmy Horn out on his last game for senior night? What's your thoughts?
I thought that was great. I think Deion gets a bad rap a lot of times, but you can tell the players really do love him. I think the way that the players love Shadur and Shiloh, too, tells you a lot about the way that family operates. And look, if it's helping out young men, I am 100% totally for it, and I'm glad to see it. And I hope Jimmy continues to take advantage of his opportunity.
All right, everybody donated today, guys. Thank you all so much. Let's get to this poll. Who should be in the playoff? Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, or none of them?
South Carolina. I'm going to say South Carolina, 47%.
None is an option?
Correct.
They probably said none, 35%.
Alabama, 20%. Ole Miss, 8%. None, 29%. South Carolina, 42%.
Woo! Tell you, the South Carolina fans are out politicking. I absolutely love it. All right, we appreciate you guys. Great calls today. Got a great show for you tomorrow. Got a couple guests going to continue to break down these games. We got 2 more championship games to talk about. And like the chances of me trusting the committee to not pull the rug out on everybody on the next selection, which is Selection Sunday, we're going.
Ooh.
Gone. Yeah, you like that. First time.